Tonight, Lumen talks about Assassin Vikings. I tell you the hottest news about Just Dance. Daan builds 3D models of rollercoasters and Arthur explains why Shadow of Mordor is an amazing game. You're listening to the Crying Gamer podcast. Don't go anywhere. So, the way we're gonna do the podcast from now on is that we're gonna start by discussing one, central game design point, which is gonna be introduced by some theory dump from Lumen.
I would like to talk about level design today, and then talk about that in an open world setting, and specifically Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which came out for us recently, but for you probably about a week or two ago. I'm gonna start with a bit of history, level design, and for me the progression of levels and the linearity of levels is what I would like to talk about, because levels in games historically, before, I'm not sure, GTA 1, GTA 2, GTA was the first to do real open world mission. Before that it was really linear, right? You would walk down a hallway, you would shoot enemies, you would kill enemies, you would have a little conversation, you would shoot some more enemies, another conversation, and that's your level. There is no real option to deviate from that. That's linear level design, right? And then GTA came along and they said, what if we have an open world? And in that world, we create a mission that the player does. We still put boundaries where if they leave boundaries, the mission fails. But let's just keep the world the same and then do missions in this world. It was really cool, plagued with bugs. There are lots of exploits and stuff, but it was a really cool idea. And then from there, games did this more and more. Well, name any RPG basically. You have this level design where you are in the world, but you build a level within the world. Or you build a mission or a quest or whatever you want to call it. So I was playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I was expecting just like any open world game, like previous Assassin's Creeds, where you have open world missions but you're still really stuck in a linear gameplay. And they did things differently. They just put you in the open world game, and then they give you a point to go to within their quests as well. It's normal to have to travel to a point and then start your quest, and then you go back into the more linear quest line, but they really just let you figure it out however you want. The first moment I noticed this was in a mission where I took my ship, I landed on an island because the marker was there, and then I killed some dudes, and then I found a guy, and then woo, I completed the mission. And then I walked back to the place I started from using their normal route. And then I found all these little nuggets of information that would have been great to have in terms of storyline before I found the guy. Right? So that's when I actually realized the missions are super free, right? You are super free to do as you please in the missions. And I wasn't sure. I was really pissed off because I missed this opportunity to follow a great story and a plotline that came back later. I got the information in the end, so it was fine, but it was part of a plotline, and then I missed the build-up. No, I was slightly irritated, to be honest. And then I thought, well, let's just see. I still like the gameplay, I like the world, I like the graphics, I like everything. So I continued playing, and then I came across this mission where it started off with a cutscene, and there's this character I really didn't like, and I think a lot of people will not like him. I was supposed to travel 1,300 meters with him from point A to B. Just hop on my horse, ride with him and some other guys on a horse, and follow that conversation. And I was not ready for that. So I said, screw you guys, I'm taking my boat. Right, I'm just gonna hop on the boat, hop on the river, and go over there. And the game recognized this. They said, alright, you're leaving this group. They just teleported the group to the endpoint. Or well, I think a ship is faster than horses, and allowed me to go to the next point of the mission. And then I really started to appreciate that, where you can decide how you want to your mission. So yeah, no, that's how I got on the point of level design.
It's great because I think it sounds like the holy grail of open world design, right? The whole reason that you make things open world is, as you said, so that you don't force a player into one linear approach or one linear experience. And I think from what you're telling me, they did a really good job of facilitating literally the opposite of one straight road, where just, giving you the whole world, where the mission just almost accidentally happens within that world.
Yeah, it feels more natural. That's the way I would describe it. It feels more like you are your character, in control of your character, doing things your character wants to do.
It's interesting because when I heard that we're going to talk about level design and open worlds, the first thing I thought is what is really necessary for a good quest or level or mission in an open world? And the first thing that came to mind is, what differentiates linearity and open world is choice. You have the choice to do stuff. So you want multiple approaches for the same problem, multiple ways to do a thing, because you don't have this linearity, which usually means that the story is a bit tighter and things make more sense. You want this gigantic ball of freedom to still feel connected, like it's an actual world, like it still matters. So you want it to react to your actions, even if you're not directly in a quest. And I think that that's what this does perfectly. Like it reacts to you, okay, so you want to be on the boat now. It recognizes that, it reacts to it, and it gives you the freedom to go there however you want. That's really cool.
I do have one question though, because now you kind of missed the entire conversation supposed to have with these guys, right? So is there any way to catch up with this information?
No, you can miss parts of the storyline. However, in the cutscenes, which are non-skippable by the way, which I also have opinions on, but this is not the place for that, I gathered enough information to know that the rest of the trip would be just bitching about the same thing they were bitching about in the cutscene. And I think that's also part of the level design.
You know, of course, if you think like the information you're about to get is useless, you're supposed to be able to skip it, I think.
I mean, I wouldn't call it useless information, I would call it atmospheric information.
I think that that's more a problem than with the game's story design and not the game's level design.
Well,
in the sense that I think it's, if you want to do this correctly, and which I think that like Breath of the Wild did great, is that if you want to have this very open world where you have these choices, you can't have a linear story like you used to do. Because like if you have 10 different ways to solve a problem and only one of them has the story you want to tell, then 9 of 10 choices will not tell your story. So I think that's more a problem with how they handled the story.
I think they handled it great. They gave you a bit of a setup. They gave you enough information to know what the next 3 minutes of conversation were going to be about. And then they give you the option to either have an atmospheric conversation with all your companions, let's call them that, or just go on your boat and enjoy the songs you can listen to on your boat, right? And I think that they did that really well. But to come back to the earlier mission where I missed information, I think that one was poorly executed. And I think you're right in what you're saying, that this is really hard work you need to do. I think it's not necessarily so that you can't have a linear story and freedom.
No, it's not that you can't have it, but you need to work around it. Like, you need to make sure that if you want a story beat to be told in a linear sense, in a game that has multiple solutions to a problem, then you need to make sure that at least part of that story beat that you want to tell is available in each of these solutions in some form or way, because otherwise people will miss it. That sucks, because you worked on your story, so...
I think they did that really well with the cutscenes, and this is one of the situations where, even though I get frustrated by the fact that I can't skip my cutscenes, I understand why you would choose not to have skippable cutscenes. There is so much freedom and so much story to be missed, that the bit of story they want you to have is unskipped. If you compare that to the last two roleplay Assassin's Creed games, this is another roleplay Assassin's Creed game. I think they designed the game and the setting way better, even though I am heavily biased towards Vikings over Egyptians. That's
The Vikings are just fucking cool.
yeah,
so.
I mean they captured this atmosphere of Vikings really well with being able to burn stuff, being able to decapitate people. You can really just be a bad Viking. And to compare this game with the old Assassin's Creed games, Assassin's Creed games basically have two genres now. You have the old Assassin's Creed games where it's really story driven with free running and assassinations, the classic vision you have of Assassin's Creed, and you have the roleplay Assassin's Creed games, which is Odyssey and Origins, where I didn't enjoy those. Even though I love the Greek setting, I didn't enjoy those things because they had the linearity of the role-playing too forced. They pretend to be a role-playing game, but only in the sense that you have a skill tree and weapon choices. That was the role-playing they have. In Valhalla, you still have a skill tree and inventory, role-play gaming tropes, you know, like upgradable weapons and all that stuff.
That's just a trope that the whole industry has fell in. Like, we have learned that, in that sense, very easy to just slap XP bars on stuff. And it's satisfying to look at. So now, even games that aren't roleplay related or even benefit very much from those systems are just like, okay, well, put a skill tree in there. Yeah, sure.
Because it will make it feel more gamey, right?
Yeah, or at least it make it feel like you can achieve more. It's like artificially bloating the content of the game, because you're like, oh, there's skill trees that I can unlock and work towards.
No, I have to say, they in this skill tree, they give you so much choice. Well, you can work with stat upgrades towards an ability.
Yeah.
And I love that. So you can choose to be more of an assassin, or you can choose to be more of a stompy Viking, or you can choose to be, I don't know what the other skill tree. I haven't done the other skill tree yet.
I mean, we can do an entire fucking episode on skill trees, because one of the things that stands out of your explanation to me is like, skill trees generally have this thing where it's like, one is just brute force, one is like the sneaky one, and then whatever weird thing they came up with, it's either ranged or magic or some other like quirky way of getting to your objective. And that's just one of those tropes where it can work really well, but if it's just blindly thrown at the game, then you're just like, this is cookie cutter.
I have to say, small spoilers ahead, in Valhalla, you won't unlock your assassin abilities for like the first 2 to 3 hours. And that's a lot.
I have to be very honest here, I've never played an Assassin's Creed game, but knowing that you can't assassinate in an Assassin's Creed game for the first... It's like playing Minecraft, but you have to unlock the crafting, you know, and it takes a 2-hour grind.
Exactly. For the first 2 to 3 hours, it's just a roleplay game, right? Just a third-person roleplay game with the Assassin's Creed logo slapped on it. And I was so ready to give up. I mean, if it was going to be that, it would be literally the same as Origins and Odyssey, but then without even the hint of assassins, right?
Yeah.
So I was furious. And then, bigger spoiler, my brother shows up with 2 assassins, and I was like, here we go. That was like that moment where I really got pulled into the game, like, oh, I know these guys, and they had those names where they've probably been mentioned, right? They ring that little bell, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to see where this takes.
No, this actually really reminds me of Black Flag as well. Like the game was very much advertised like you can have your own boat, but it takes like 5 hours or so in game time before you actually get your boat. Before that you can assassinate, but the actual boat part takes quite a bit of time. You actually have to set up the entire story before you get your boat.
I have to say, Assassin's Creed games, well, they were heavy on the tutorial, take you by the hand and unlock new abilities and play with them. And then with the open world, they kind of let that go and let you unlock abilities more through the storyline. And with Black Flag, I understand 14-year-old you being disappointed that you don't have big boat make big boom. For me, it felt like a logical place to get a boat, right? It felt like logical story progression. And then the boat makes more sense instead of just getting big boat make big boom from the start.
Yeah, it definitely made more sense.
So in a way that makes it more satisfying too, maybe?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, normally I would fully agree with you.
It's not satisfying that it is this way, but if it weren't this way, it would have been really dissatisfying.
Yeah, exactly. It's
because then it would have just been like, where the fuck did you get this boat?
Yeah.
How do you suddenly have a boat? And now it's like, oh, so this happened, and now I have a boat. And now my big boat goes big boom.
Yeah.
So now I'm happy.
I have small boat go small boom, and then I can either choose to have big boat small boom or small boat big boom, and then I can have big boat big boom. You know, that like it's.
So how would you feel if the story up to the point where you got the boat was just like summarized in one short opening cutscene and you started with the boat? Do you think that would have made the story worse?
That would have literally been a movie.
It would have felt really cheap if you tried to condense all that storytelling in a small section.
Okay, so there's a lot of story that actually happens there.
Yeah, a lot.
Let's just say you go from being on a deserted island to having a ship with a crew.
Ah, right, yeah, okay, I can imagine that needs some setting up.
But in between, you are captive, you are like meeting with some kind of high-ranking officials, and you are a fugitive.
Yeah, it's all the things.
So much happens there. But I mean, I didn't have my big boat, and I wanted to go big boom, so I was disappointed.
To bring that back to Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it's the same thing with assassinations. Like, you won't believe how many times I've tried to sneak up to a guy when I didn't have my assassination yet. Tried all sorts of attack buttons just to get the assassination off, and then just trigger combat. And well, then I'll go combat, decapitate people, all the fun stuff. Which I have to say, they made the combat feel really satisfying. Yeah, no, I love quite a lot about Assassin's Creed Valhalla. If you want to get the Assassin's Creed feeling of like the progression of the series, like not the storyline of the series, but just like how the game's developed, play Black Flag and then play Valhalla, and compare those two games. That's what I would say.
To bring it back to general open world level design, how many of you have seen/played the game Shadow of Mordor? Because it's a game that when I think about the game, I am not excited by it. It's not a game that I would classify as a good open world game. It's not an experience that I, knowing me as what I like to play. However, when I play it, I have the best time of my fucking life, and I just can't put it down. And I can't understand this. What I said before is, for like a good open world quest, you need multiple options to one problem, because it's an open world, and that's like the point of being open and not linear is, multiple ways to solve one problem, and the world needs to react to you. And I think that multiple thing is just not really there, in my opinion. Like, in almost any open world, you have towns with side quests and people to talk to, and you find cool things along the way, and there are bandit camps or stuff. But in Shadow of Mordor, it's only bandit camps. It's like the whole world is one big bandit camp. Which is logical, because you're in Mordor, you're literally in the center of where the enemies are, and that means that you're almost constantly in combat. And that's alright, that's a choice of game. Combat is very nice. But then the missions are also almost always combat. Like, you can choose if you want to do ranged, stealth, or melee, but it's always combat. So you're like fighting this gauntlet of enemies to get to a point, to then fight waves of enemies at that point, to then fight a gauntlet of enemies moving to another point, and that's the game, But that's the thing, it feels really open though, because the story is very loosely connected. It's literally you running around Mordor being like, I don't know what to do, I guess I'll kill some boys here now, oh shit, that triggered something, okay. So there isn't really like a set up plan. There's an overall goal, but there isn't really a plan or a story to follow. It's just a guy that's angry at orcs killing orcs. But what I really enjoy about that game, which I think is why I enjoy playing it so much, even though everything in me tells me this isn't an open world game that is suitable for me, is that it's very, very reactive. So as Misha said, it has procedurally generated bosses, which is amazing. So at the start of the game, you have the army of Sauron, which has commanders and high rank dudes and war chiefs and all kinds of stuff. And they all have, some people are rivals, some people are bodyguards of each other, or they have alliances, all that kind of stuff. And it's all randomly generated. Their names, their weaknesses, their strength, their characteristics, which means that it's very fresh to play the game over and over again. But that's cool, but that's not reactive. What I really love about the game is that it remembers what you do. So let's say you fight a captain and he's almost dead. You shoot an exploding barrel next to him. Explodes, he burns to a crisp, he dies. Good job, you killed the captain. So you move away, and then like an hour later, you get ambushed by this group of orcs. And you're like, oh shit, it's an ambush. And out of the bushes crawls this charred orc. And that's the captain that you attacked, and he survived, and now he has a vengeance for you, He set up ambushes and traps to get you, because you burned the fuck out of him. He's angry. He wants a second round. And, like, he's a bit stronger. He might be, like, afraid of fire now, or immune to fire, or something, that progresses his character. And that happens constantly. And I love that you can shame an orc, and then he slowly turns mad because he's being bullied by everyone because you've shamed him, like, 5 times. If it had a good, like, multiple choice for a solution, instead of just, you're gonna fight shit on the way, and then when you get there, you're gonna fight shit. If it had more to give than just that, I think it would have been one of my favorite games of all time.
Right, so for the next segment, Daan is gonna explain what he's been up to with his roller coasters this week in 1 minute. So Daan, are you ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1, tell us everything.
Okay, so basically, normally I would play Planet Coaster in a week. This week I have not done it. This week I have played No Limits 2, which is basically the Planet Coaster coaster designer. However, it is not a piece by piece, but a node-based coaster designer, which makes it much more precise, which is great. It also has a great function that you can export the spline of the coaster into a series of points, which you can then import in any 3D modeling software. So I did that, which requires a nice plugin, which was made by someone, and I will have to plug in, but I can't look it up right now because I have a single minute. And now I am modeling the track around that spline, and then I am going to chop it into pieces, 3D print it, and hopefully make it functional in a 7 minute.
You still have 20 seconds left.
Dang!
Okay, well, apparently I'm much faster talking in English than I thought. Yeah, so basically that, I'm building a coaster, I designed a quick layout, and I don't even have a 3D printer yet, and I wouldn't know where to put it, but hey, that's some worries for the future.
Straight fire. Now that we know what Daan has been up to with his coasters,
I think it's time to get to the release radar.
Yeah, Misha, you have met up with a nice little game.
Today I have a single game, and you might laugh at me. I want to talk about Just Dance 2021.
Ooh, that's very unexpected.
I'm not gonna laugh at you, that's great.
Just Dance isn't the game that I'll play the most time, or that I'll love the most, but it is probably the most fun I ever had playing games with friends. It's not consistently great, but it has few awesome moments that are just so much fun. Anyway, the 12th of November, it's been released for Switch, PS4, Stadia, and Xbox One. And then at the 24th of November, it's going to be released for the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S. It's going to feature new bangers, such as Bailando, Runaway, Senorita, and Blinding Lights, and a whole load more that are all like just straight banger songs. And it's going to come pre-bundled with 1 month of Just Dance Unlimited, which I think is the best thing they ever did, which is where they just piled up songs of all the Just Dances into one monthly subscription service. So you don't need to collect all the games and whatever. And what we used to do when we go on holiday with friends is somebody would just bring a Switch with 1 month of Just Dance Unlimited, and it'd just be great. I just have a deep love for Just Dance, and that's why I wanted to highlight its release this week.
I haven't played Just Dance in such a long time.
The thing that makes Just Dance so amazing too is that you don't need any gaming experience, right? Like, it's not a very gamey game. It has visuals indicating what you should do. It has the lyrics. You can just literally sit there and just bob your head to the song and sing along, and it's still a hoot. I think it's the pinnacle of party game design.
I just love the aesthetic of Just Dance with the like abstract mannequin people in these very neon bright colors. It's very pleasing to look at. It's very fun to look at and I think that that's very important for a party game, is that if you have a party game, it needs to be fun for people not playing the game to look at other people playing the game.
I love seeing people dance and just like kind of flail around trying to... Theoretically, you can just do Just Dance with one hand move. Nobody does that. If you do that, you're a monster.
This part isn't sponsored, but I do think that it would be very interesting for most people who listen to this podcast to maybe check out the Core Game Jam that's going on Itch right now. It's a game jam that's open for everybody. There's cash prizes, and it's especially aimed at people who have very little experience with building games or programming but are interested in the thing. The engine is a low barrier of entry. I would absolutely not recommend making your major project in this. Maybe not even putting a ton of time into getting amazing at this, but it is a very good way to start building games and having real people play them. We will put a link in the description. I think it's amazing that they put up money for game jams because, well, it's just putting money into the industry and it's getting more people excited. So that's amazing, and I think we want to promote that even though this section is absolutely not sponsored.
I wanted to promote someone as well for my little coaster segment, because I talked about all those plugins and people showing me how to get a spline into 3D modeling software, and I wanted to shout out Prince My Ride Detroit, who has some really great YouTube tutorials on that. He has made like a fully functional 3D model of an inverted coaster, and it's just stunning what he's doing.
This was the Crying Gamer podcast, which is made by the It's Okay to Cry Entertainment team. You can find us as It's Okay to Cry Entertainment at YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitch. We'd love to hear from you, so please do let us know what you think about our podcast and which topics we should tackle next. With that, I'll leave you with a fun little outro clip, and thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
So you actually think it's great, by the way? That's,
yeah.
As a side tangent.
I think it's great.
Because I was actually sort of expecting it to be like meh.
No, I have
maybe
to
that's
say.
a
Well,
side
no,
tangent.
we'll get to my opinions. We'll get to my opinions.
We'll get there.
Oh.